Hello everyone, and welcome to our first segment of Signal Smart Tea. I'm Dorian, and I am the Digital Content Marketing Specialist here at Signal. And with me today I have...
Alec Patrick, I'm the COO. I've been here for about 7 years. Very nice to virtually meet you all.
And so today we will be spilling the tea on all of your college finances as graduation season comes to an end and high school seniors prepare to step on campus this coming fall. So Alec, are you more of a tea person or a coffee drinker, or do you prefer them at different times of the day?
I would say I like a little bit of both. Late in the evening, you don't want to be filling yourself up with caffeine, so I'll shift to tea.
Yeah.
This time of the day, I'm open to either, but since we're sipping tea, I figured we'd sip tea today.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
I have some options.
Awesome.
So we have good old decaffeinated green tea, and then we also have vanilla caramel, which
Yes.
I like the vanilla caramel, but obviously you can pick whichever
Well,
one
let's
you
get a
want.
little caffeine in. Let's do some vanilla caramel today.
Perfect. I think I'm gonna go green today, just because I've had 2 coffees already. So,
Right.
what's your favorite kind of tea to drink?
I've actually started getting into like the fruity, the herbal teas now.
Okay.
Yeah, there's like Bigelow, I think is the name. Oh, this is actually some Bigelow right here.
Yes, I'm a chai person myself.
Oh, I like chai
I
too.
love chai. Yeah, iced and hot. So I like how you can do either or. I feel like it's hard sometimes with certain teas to do iced, but chai is always a good option, and it's, I think, one of the most caffeinated teas that you can drink.
Oh, so that's the real reason.
Yes.
I went to a place and they actually have like a chai tea mixed with espresso. I can't remember what they call it.
Oh yeah. So that is a dirty chai tea
Dirty
latte.
chai, yes.
Yeah. I used to
it's actually
barista.
really- so you know. Cheers tea.
Signal Smart Tea. Woo! I know right off the bat that you have a few kids yourself, so I'm just curious if you've started implementing any saving solutions to start saving for their higher education, college, anything like that, and what approach you've taken.
Sure. I have 5 kids. We have number 6 on the way, so we have a lot. I think one of the things that's been helpful is being able to separate kids' accounts into their own, right? So we have our own accounts for each of the kids. That's one of the awesome things now with our new online banking platform. You can see all of your different accounts that are underneath your main account, so you can see any account that you're linked on. So that's been really helpful to just help you divide that. Also looking at different investment strategies, not only just putting money in an account and holding it, but I'm a Bitcoin person, so some of us, we've actually put some money into Bitcoin, and the CD rates now are also amazing, so trying to leverage some of the CD rates and the higher interest rate products that we have is really awesome.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
Taking advantage of the rates when we have them, and when they're not there, maybe looking at other options. But that's the way we've handled it. Sure, there's better ways, but that's how we're doing it right now.
Yeah, I know a big thing when I was a kid was like savings bonds. Is that still a thing that's happening? Or?
Not for me as much. I know my grandparents got those for me a lot when I was younger, but I really haven't gotten too much into the savings bonds. But that's maybe another option.
And so, based on your personal experience so far, what advice would you give to families who are looking to start implementing those solutions, or even students who are getting ready for college in a year, 2 years, however long, who want to actively be involved in that?
Sure. For me, one of the things here at Signal, at least, that we've been able to take advantage of is our financial counseling that we have through AFS. So that's been a way where you can get an idea where you are financially and start figuring out the best way to start allocating your funds. You don't always want to just throw money into savings. There's different things you need to save for. You need emergency savings. Sometimes it's better to let the professionals do that side of it. So that's one of the things I would recommend for folks, is just to leverage what they maybe have at their work. They may have financial counseling at their workplaces. Use that and see what they recommend, and that's a big piece of it. I think also Maryland has programs through the state. Maryland has a 529 program for investing in college, where you can get tax breaks and tax benefits. So that's another area where people can leverage and really look at some of the programs and things they have with the 529 plan. But again, those are, you really want to have a financial professional kind of guide when you should be leveraging that program, when you should maybe be saving for emergency savings, but fitting it in based on your life journey, what's going on in your life, what can you afford, what do you need to focus on and prioritize.
Right. Yeah, I guess it's a good idea to keep in mind where you do fall in that budgeting sense for schools that you are looking at. I know a lot of schools do offer scholarships though, like the school I went to, everybody got a scholarship, a merit-based scholarship, so that was nice about a private school, but I know state schools can be a little more tricky based off of SAT scores and stuff like that. So,
Right.
yeah, I agree. I think that's really important. How early would you suggest that families or individuals start saving for college?
Definitely as early as possible. College is expensive, as I'm sure you know, Dorian.
Yes.
Coming out of it. I still am paying some college loans myself,
Okay.
even myself. So, it can get expensive, and you get into these long payment payback programs, where you're paying your loan for a while. So there's definitely no better time to start than now. You need to get into it, I think, as early as possible. But also, like what we were talking about earlier, really making sure that it fits within, where you are from your financial goals and just your finances in general. There's important things that you need to make sure you have money for. You may have an emergency situation, so sometimes those emergency funds are just as important as saving for that college education. So I also think it's important, even early on, to start getting financial advice from professionals, and just see how they can help leverage things like the 401k that you have and the different options that you may have from your employer, and make sure that you're starting as early as you can, early as makes sense for you.
Definitely.
Yeah.
What are some common mistakes that you found among people, either in your life or outside of it, that they make when they're saving for college? Is it not starting early enough, or misjudging how much debt they think they're going to be in, anything like that?
I think not starting at all is probably the biggest mistake. Like, you have to start somewhere, and you have to start at some point. So I think just avoiding it, or if you have plans for college, putting something in place to start that process. So I think really the biggest thing to avoid is just not planning and not starting. So I would say start as early as possible, and like we talked about, get some help and get people to, if you're not an expert in finances, get somebody to help you out and guide you on what you can and can't afford, and where you should really be putting your money, and make that part of your plan and your program. And I think that's really important, is to have a plan and have a program, and make sure this is incorporated into it if that's part of what's going on in your finances.
Yeah, definitely. So I know we talked earlier about making sure you have savings for an emergency, as well as allocating funds towards college. But do you have any certain approach that you would recommend for balancing other financial goals? So say you have like your emergency fund, your college fund, and then you also have rent to pay, or you're paying off a car payment, or student loans like you said you still have. Do you have any approach for that?
Sure. I think there's a lot of financial tools that are available, and I think they can really assist in helping you plan for these things. I mean, even with our online banking program, there's budgeting tools in there, as well as financial goals in there, where you can set a goal and start saving for a vacation or college. Those are different options. I've actually started using an app called YNAB, You Need a Budget, and it's an app where it's a similar thing, where it's just a budgeting app, and making sure that you set the goals, you identify the things that you want to save for, and start setting aside money for that. So then you know where every dollar is going, you know where your money's going, and then you can plan appropriately. My past, and we talk about mistakes that you make, sometimes flying by the seat of your pants sometimes is not the best way, and I have done that in the past. I think it's better to start to get that organized and make sure you know where your money is. That way you find areas of opportunity to cut. Maybe you're going to Starbucks every day, right? You can replace that with tea. Or find different areas where you can leverage your budget a little better, or trim things. So that, I also found that you get these monthly things that you're paying for, like Netflix or different things like that, and sometimes you may not need that, or you may just be paying it because it's coming through on a monthly basis. But when you really sit down and evaluate your finances, maybe you don't necessarily need that, or you can get away with it for a couple months and take that money aside and start putting it towards something like college or things. So that's where I think the prioritization comes in, really identifying what's important and what makes sense. And a budgeting app like that really helps you understand exactly where your money's going.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think I need one of those, because I'm more of like a pen and paper kind of person.
Yes.
So I write down most of my budgeting stuff, but it's much easier to see it in real time, where everything's going. And nowadays it's very hard, because there are so many subscription services and streaming services. And I know that I definitely don't need all of the ones that I currently have, so that's definitely a good thing to revisit. It's always the small stuff. I feel like the big stuff is coming, and you have the money for it, and then it's the small things that really get you, like the subscriptions always add up and things like that.
And another thing too, some of the subscriptions will actually be less if you pay in advance. So I think about insurance, car insurance for instance. A lot of times if you pay that lump 6 months at one time, you can get a discount doing that, as opposed to paying it every month. So if you plan a little better, then you can maybe get some savings that that way as
Yeah.
well. So, and these things allow you, budgeting app, you can go ahead and put that stuff in, plan for it ahead of time, so that when it's due, you're ready for it, as opposed to, like I was doing in the past, where you're kind of flying. But then that bill comes in for, let's say, $1,000 for insurance. You don't have the $1,000 because you haven't been preparing for it,
Right.
and now you have to pay maybe $1,100 or whatever because you want to spread it out over time as opposed to just paying it all off. So that's another area where I think the budgeting can help.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like that's another thing that people don't really think about. Me especially. I never thought about
save a little bit here and there.
Yeah.
Right? Cut a 10% off.
Every little bit counts.
Yeah.
And then, do you have any tips on how parents can involve their kids in the college saving process? Have you done anything with your children to help get them involved at this early stage? I know they're all relatively young, right?
Yeah, most
so
of
maybe
them
not
are
yet,
young.
but
Yeah, hopefully in the future.
Yeah.
I do have a 16-year-old, so we've tried to get her involved a bit, and I think some of that is helping them get their own account and getting them set up. We have some minor accounts, at Signal, for instance, where you can get your child set up, and then they have their own account that you're joint on, and you can use that to give them a debit card and maybe put allowance in there and have them actually start using an app, and just seeing some of the tools that are available for them, getting familiar with it, so that when they're coming out of college or coming out of high school, that's not the first time they're seeing these things. So I think that's one area how you can get your kids involved, but I really think giving them a debit card early, and how I've seen even with our 16-year-old, when we first gave her a debit card, she didn't even know how to use it, right? So then it's like you give her the card, there's even a level of intimidation to purchase something because you don't even know how to swipe the card or whatever. So I think little things like that, where you burn down these barriers of, they may be small, but not knowing how to use a debit card can be very, very much a large thing if you don't address it. So I think allowing them to use these tools early will get them comfortable with it, and then it won't be such a burden when they get to the point where it's a requirement.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So lastly, what advice would you give someone who feels like they're falling behind on their college savings?
That's always a tough situation when you're falling behind. A lot of times, money is not flowing, so you're needing to really deal with every little bit that you can. So I think that's where the planning that we talked about earlier is very important, and budgeting. Even I recently have kind of shifted from Wild West kind of budgeting to being more formal, and I think doing that is very helpful. You can plan a lot better, and then I think a big part of that is cutting out those pieces. So in some cases, you may not need to go out for food as much, or you may need to buy groceries and cook, or make changes to your lifestyle in some fashion. And I think a lot of times that planning and budgeting can be helpful in doing that. Also, we mentioned the Maryland 529 program earlier. They actually have programs there as well where you can get a small amount added to your plan. So there's maybe like little awards and gifts that can be looked for, reaching out to family and friends, and maybe not friends, but you may have a grandparent, and just letting them know that college is an important thing, and they can sometimes assist and help you out, or come up with maybe a payment type plan to help you out with things. So I think those are all different ways to kind of get into it. If you find yourself where you're in a situation it's hard to meet the budget that you're coming up with, but there's definitely avenues out there available, and just looking for those opportunities and trying to take them as they come.
Yeah, for people who want to ask family members for help or anything, but they might feel a certain anxiety about that, do you have any recommendations of how they could approach it? Or, like if you have family who's going to help you financially, that's a great support system in and of itself. But I think a lot of people feel embarrassed to ask, especially people my age who maybe just graduated college and are in debt, or are in college currently and might be running out of their funds that they set aside for tuition. So I think it's important to maybe give some advice on what approach they might be able to take, or how they could go about doing that.
I mean, I'll do my best there. That's a tough one as well. But I think one of the biggest parts of that is by not asking, you're always going to get a no, right? So if you don't ask, the answer will always be no if you don't at least speak up. And so I think just even understanding that and knowing that you're not going to get anything unless you ask is a big part of that. So I don't never think it's a bad thing to ask. The worst it can happen is they'll say no.
Mhm.
And so I think family is a good place to also be able to, you're in a safe space with family. So that if there's anybody who you're going to be willing to ask, it's going to be your family. So I would say that's a good opportunity to challenge yourself from a negotiation perspective and an influence perspective, and
Right.
just ask the question, and you may be surprised sometimes to what you find out. Sometimes you'll get yeses when you expect nos, and
Yeah,
sometimes you'll get
definitely.
nos when you expect yeses,
Mhm.
but you're always going to get a no if you don't ask.
Yeah.
For sure.
That's what I always tell myself. I'm like, the worst thing that'll happen is they say no.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, same thing in in employment and negotiating for salaries and things like that.
Mhm.
Also, another thing for students coming out of college, it's important to negotiate. Don't have that same mindset when it comes to your salaries and things like that. Everything's negotiable, and if you don't ask, you're always going to get no.
Mhm.
But if you ask, you can find yourself getting a little bit of a step beyond you would have just by asking a question.
Yeah.
So never hesitate to ask.
Well, that was very insightful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was great talking with you. I
Mhm.
appreciated it.
Yeah, I hope your tea was good.
It was delicious. I loved every moment.
Yeah,
Thank you
spilling
again for the
all
opportunity.
tea.
Yeah.
Mhm. Thank you, Alec, for joining me for the first segment of Signal Smart Tea and spilling all the tea on college finances. And thank you, everybody, for watching. Once again, I'm Dorian.
I'm Alec. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and we'll see you all next time.
Thank you.